David, I don't need to ask you. I remember how excited you were when Italy won Euro.
Yeah.
But who else here loves sports? Okay, good, good. Well, since I realize that this little trinket has everyone's attention right now, and I need you to stay focused. Don't want this to be a distraction as I'm talking. I'll just get out of the way. This is my Super Bowl ring, because in a previous professional life, I'm an 8-year veteran of the National Football League and a Super Bowl champion with my hometown Pittsburgh Steelers. Played for Pittsburgh for 6 seasons. I also played 1 season apiece at the end of my career for Arizona and Houston, respectively. Today, now, my company is called Basic Instructions Mind Map. I'm a keynote and motivational speaker first and foremost. This is what I'm trained to do, just like we're doing here right now. I also do leadership and sales trainings with companies and teams. And I'm an executive mindset coach working with entrepreneurs to master their minds, mentally and emotionally, the mind-body-energy connection, and not only for success in their careers, but to achieve genuine satisfaction, fulfillment, and harmony in their relationships, their lives, and in their careers. Now, my focus as a speaker and coach is the mind-body-energy connection. You realize when we're talking about energy, we're talking about emotions. It's just energy and motion. Think about it. Emotions. It's interesting, isn't it? Now, when we talk about integrative psychology, it really all comes down to something that Dan's mentioned a couple of times this weekend. We're talking about vision, but we'll get deeper into that in just a minute. It's really funny. I'm thinking about my coach. Now, my coach, he's from Hawaii. I love this guy. My coach, he's always talking about his coach, his mentor, what he used to say in the ancient Hawaiian language. Aohe pau ko ike ko halau, which translates to realize not all learning comes from your school. There's learnings all around you if you quiet down and open up your mind. When you change the way you look at things, things you look at start to change. It's really interesting. You know, one thing I commonly hear when I meet new people, I was talking to this CFO. She has a manufacturing company in Kansas City. And I remember in our meeting she said, wow, you know, we really admire all that you've accomplished in your career. There's no doubt we can learn a lot from your example. Now, it's clear that you've had the highest level of success. A lot of parallels. When I think about the people that made the biggest difference in my professional success, what I think about are the coaches that really show me what it takes to be the best at what I do. I had coaches that thought really different back when I was in college and in the NFL. Now I'm a storyteller. So I'm going to tell some stories that I imagine will open up your mind to more possibilities for you as individuals, as leaders, and for those that you serve in your role, in your community, and in your company. Now, before I even get started, I just want to say, if you have any questions, write them down. There will be a time for questions. Just trust me. You never know if you focus and stay focused and just quiet your mind and listen, I may answer your question. I'm going somewhere, just trust me. It gets deep now, so without further ado, let's get deeper into it. Now, I went to Purdue University, proud Boilermaker. We won a lot of games back in the day when I was in college, but of course, I'm sure you can imagine when you have this guy on your team, when Drew Brees, this guy is your quarterback, I'm sure you can imagine how he can be a big asset, really, really make a difference. You know, but when I first got to Purdue, thinking back to 1996, I was 17 years old. Up until now, we suffered a lot of disappointments. I mean, Purdue football, we weren't very good. We had just suffered, well, before I even get it, I mean, just winning a Big Ten championship, Big Ten football championship against teams like Michigan and Ohio State, it felt like a dream or a fantasy. Now, again, when I got to Purdue back when I was 17, 1996, up until now, we suffered a lot of disappointments. Purdue football wasn't very good. We just suffered our 12th consecutive losing season. My first year in 96, we won just 3 out of 11 games. And Purdue football hadn't done much better than that in the previous decade. So after experiencing that pain of losing year after year over and over, clearly our athletic department, they believed that it was time for a change in our approach. A time to change the way we look at achieving success. So I guess it's time to hire a new coach. So 1997, Joe Tiller was hired as the new head coach from the University of Wyoming. Now Wyoming's team are called the Cowboys. And a real cowboy is the energy I'm getting from this guy. I'll never forget the first time I met him. I mean, he's an easy speaking gentleman. He was bald. He had this seriously thick Burt Reynolds mustache. His cowboy boots were sexy. I mean, really impressive. His belt buckle, you know, cowboy belt buckles, was massive. I mean, he looked like the heavyweight champion of the world. That's what I remember thinking. And of course, he had that cowboy charm and disposition to match. And I can't forget his iconic spectacles. Now, back in '96, I redshirted. I didn't get to play that season. It's probably why our record was 3-8. The first year when we hired this new coach, I mean, our fortunes turned around immediately as soon as we hired this guy. We went from 3-8 to 9-3 in just 1 year, complete 180 turnaround. And it's for the 1997 season, Coach was named the National College Football Coach of the Year in all of NCAA for the high-level success he helped this team achieve and for turning around a situation that everybody believed was hopeless. So for that Cinderella season we had back in 1997, to begin the 1998 season, Purdue was featured in the NCAA Kickoff Classic, the very first college football game of the year. I mean, there was no other game on TV this day. I remember, because I was 18. I remember thinking, whoa, this is incredible. Nobody else could watch anything right now but us. I always wondered what it would feel like to have all eyes on me. You know, like Monday Night Football. Now, Coach had an interesting way of motivating us. So we go to Southern, we playing against Southern Cal. August 31st, 1998, we're playing against the USC Trojans in Los Angeles in August. Summer in Southern California, picture it. It was literally 120 degrees on the field that day. I mean, you ever like go in the desert, you see those wavy lines, you know, coming off the ground? Just like that, just imagine that. It was literally the hottest day of my life. It was a long game, but I digress. Coach had this interesting way of moving us with his words. He had a really, really unique method for motivating and inspiring us as a team. So after that game against USC, he told everybody in the locker room, we're gonna stay right here where we are. We're just gonna stay one more day here in Los Angeles. Because he had this idea that he believed would be really good for this new season that we're going into. Didn't tell us anything about it, just told us everyone's got to be down in the lobby of our hotel at 9 a.m. So the next day I went down, had a little breakfast, and then went down to the lobby. So get down to the lobby and everybody's down. Everyone's down right now in the lobby, quietly, patiently waiting to see what this is all about. I remember it was about 8:45. I saw the charter buses pull up in front of our hotel. Coach appeared from what seemed like out of nowhere and just instructed us, everybody get on the bus. We're going on a field trip. Now this is somebody, when he gives you an instruction, you just follow it. So just get on the bus. No idea where we're going. So I remember we're on a highway about maybe 36 minutes later, and I saw the sign. It said Pasadena, and a light bulb went off. A couple moments later, the buses pulled up in front of the Rose Bowl Stadium. Now, if you're even a casual college football fan, you're familiar with the Rose Bowl game played at the end of every college football season. Now, the Rose Bowl is known as the granddaddy of them all because it is the oldest operating bowl game out there and typically features the champions from the Pac-12 and Big Ten Conference. I'll never forget this experience of visiting the Rose Bowl this day back in '98. I mean, this place was huge. I remember the first thing I did when I went in there was I ran my fingers through the grass. just so I could feel it. I even took my socks and shoes off so that I could actually, right now, feel the earth on the soles of my feet. And I could hear it in my head, that Purdue All-American Marching Band playing on Alma Mater. Hail, hail to old Purdue, all hail to our old gold and black. Just envisioning the cheers of 91,000 fans on New Year's Day. And I mean, the place was so expansive. Standing on the field, looking up into the stands, the rows just seemed to go on forever and ever. It was so picturesque, just gazing at the purple silhouette of the San Gabriel Mountains. I couldn't believe I was in the Rose Bowl right now. It was an experience I could have never imagined when I first got to Purdue back in '96, but here we are. It feels like a dream or a fantasy. So Coach gave us all some time to get more comfortable with this place, and explore it. So after getting even more comfortable, after a while, Coach was at the 50-yard line and he had everyone's attention. And so we gathered, and so everybody's together. We're on the 50-yard line waiting to hear Coach talk. And then Coach spoke and he said, guys, I want everybody to just be in the moment right now. Let's all just take a deep breath in. Bless you. What do you see? What do you hear? How do you feel? I want you to take in this moment through all 5 of your senses. We just finished our first game of the season yesterday. But now the real test begins. And why did we even play that game yesterday? Because you guys had a great season last year. But I want you to recognize something. You do realize that we came in 2nd place in the Big Ten. 2nd. Was that the vision we saw when we started? We were 1 step short of what we aim to do. Now, you guys are a Big Ten team. You realize that under normal circumstances, you don't get to be in this place unless you win, unless you're champions. God, just imagine it. I would love to play here in January. Who would love to play here? Raise your hand if you're with me. And everybody's hand was raised. That's right. Excellent. What I want you guys to do is hold this moment in your mind. Just hold it there. Remember this experience and hold it there as we go even deeper into the season. This is the goal. To come back here and play on January 1st as champions. And it's going to take every single one of us. Everyone's got to hold the same vision. If even one of you decides that, I don't know, that would be cool, but we're not coming back. If you decide to not hold this vision in your mind as we go deeper into this, the rest of us are going to have to suffer for that. Now you have a tangible experience of what the future goal is. Whether we make it back here as champions or not, it's completely up to you. You need to invest everything, every day, in the classroom, in the film room, in the weight room, on the practice field. It's got to be about reliving this vision in your actual reality. Wow. Coach just had a way with words, man. It used to just really, really get me going. This whole experience, the funny thing is, it seems like a lifetime ago, but I'm sure you guys can relate. We all have experiences from our younger days that affect us even in our lives right now. It's interesting, when I meet new people, a lot of people seem curious and impressed. I guess they're just thinking about the fact that for me, I was drafted into the NFL, played 8 years, which as Dan said, that's almost 3 times longer than normal, and I won a Super Bowl playing for my hometown team. I mean, just imagine it. Playing in the NFL and winning a Super Bowl, bringing it home. I mean, it's the kind of thing that if you weren't sitting here right now, focused in comfortably, if you didn't hear me speaking and see me as living proof, some might say it feels like a dream or a fantasy. Now just imagine if this fantasy is your actual experience. grateful as I feel right now, this is an actual experience for my life. It's really funny. A lot of times when I meet new people, you know, most people don't get to play pro sports, so when you think about it, it makes total sense. You know, this lady said to me the other day, I think it was the receptionist when I was visiting this company, she said, "Wow, that is incredible. You mean to tell me you were born in Pittsburgh, played for the Steelers, and you won the Super Bowl? That is amazing." You know, I've always wondered, what would that feel like for me if I won the Super Bowl? I bet that feels spectacular, am I right? She is right. Winning the Super Bowl, it's a feeling that you already know, all of us know deep down. A feeling that you're very intimately familiar with. We all have memories, right? So just go back into your mind right now and go back to the memories from back then. You know, the ones that gave you the butterflies, that feeling of excitement in your stomach, the sensations, the moments that made your pulse race and your breath shallow. You hear your heart beating in your ears. See those things now. Things that took you to levels of pleasure, fulfillment, satisfaction. It felt so right. It almost feels wrong. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, the kind of thing that just spins around and around in your mind like a vinyl record, obsessing. You try to stop thinking about this, but here it comes again, round and round and round, obsessing. You obsess about this because you just want to feel this all the time, forever. That's what it feels like to win the Super Bowl. It's really funny, I think back to that year. You know, if you go to Google right now and said, who won the Super Bowl in 2005? Of course it's going to say the Pittsburgh Steelers. What it doesn't tell you is the story about how this team and that championship came together. So I'm going to tell you. So just picture it. We're just about 3/4 of the way into the 2005 NFL season. Thinking back to when the season began, we had big hopes, high expectations for the year. Because you go back to 2004, that year the Pittsburgh Steelers, we had the best record in the entire NFL with 15 wins and 1 defeat. And that 1 defeat was in week 2. We won a lot. So going into the season, obviously, we're feeling pretty confident. Now, in that season, we accomplished a lot of things. Our quarterback was the Rookie of the Year. And we made it all the way to the AFC Championship, 1 step short of what the actual goal is, the Super Bowl. Not yet, though, thanks to this guy, Brady. I don't know if you heard of him. This guy, Brady, I digress. So, we're 11 games in, and we just lost our 3rd consecutive game of the season. If we lose even 1 more, we're mathematically eliminated from playoff contention, and our dreams of winning the Super Bowl, that will be over. All of a sudden, everyone's feeling panicked. The fans are really freaking out. I mean, I remember hearing on talk radio in Pittsburgh, the guy was saying, he said, the Steelers right now, they're way too deep in the hole. They're out. But of course, us, the guys, we're saying all the right things. I mean, I'm seeing nothing but positive quotes in the paper. I even said to a journalist in the TV interview, hey, relax. We got this. Just take a deep breath. All right, we'll just keep going deeper into the season, 1 game at a time. No problem. Now, Coach, Hall of Fame head coach, Bill Cowher, don't know if you heard of this guy either, but I mean, Coach right now, he's focused, he's dialed in. Think about it, there's gotta be a reason this guy's a Hall of Fame coach. Now, Coach has a deeper understanding of what everyone's feeling right now. You know, I remember I envisioned in that team meeting after the 3rd loss, the coach would come in and give it to us good. Really tear us a new one for not playing up to our potential. But, I shit you not, what he said in this meeting shattered my reality. It completely changed my perspective on what I believed it took to get a team to adopt the necessary mindset to achieve our biggest professional goals. So Coach walks in, stands in front of the group, and everyone goes silent. Silent. In anticipation of what was about to happen. And he spoke and he said, guys, listen to me very carefully. When you think about where you are right now in this season, realize that you don't know what you don't know. And believe it or not, it's what you don't know that you don't know that's running the show, called your career and your life right now. And think about this for a moment, guys. Since you don't know what you don't know, how do you know what you believe you do know is right? Don't answer me now, just relax and consider what I'm saying. You don't know what you don't know. I told you it gets deep, right? So what's the relevancy of all of this? Wet my whistle a little bit. Now, when I think about, being a member and being here with my fellow Bellwether Alliance members, every so often we get together for this opportunity to allow your mind to rest and just enjoy the silence when you have speakers up here. So, I don't know about you, you're probably a lot like me, I just think about the value of this. It's important to me that Bellwether brings value to my life and to my business. And I imagine you feel the same. So I guess that means for me, I'm supposed to bring you value right now. So I'm feeling up, the pressure's on. When I get in these situations, because we got some important people here, I just gonna imagine that for every 7 minutes that you're listening, for every 7 minutes that you're, looking up here, seeing me, I'm just gonna imagine that, I'm saving each one of your companies $1 million.
More.
How's that for value? I digress. Sports fans, there are certain sports figures that people just naturally connect to at a deeper level, like Michael Jordan. And everybody here is familiar with Jordan, right? I don't know, when you think about Jordan, perhaps you think of his world championships, his ability to score at will. So much entertainment value, incredible to watch, And think back to the 90s, you know what I mean? How Jordan automatically made you a fan of the Chicago Bulls, right? The thing I admire most about this guy is he was asked in an interview once what his best skill is. He's so good at everything, right? What is your best skill? So I imagine he would say it's his ability to dunk from the free throw line, or maybe just be able to score whenever he feels like it. But what he said, what his answer was, genuinely surprised me. You know what he said his number one skill is? He said, I'm coachable. I'm like a sponge. I'm just aggressive to learn. So that's what we're talking about today, is learning something new. Maybe just considering a perspective that's never been presented before. Now, I don't know about you, but no matter how old I get, I love learning new things. I can even remember my very earliest memories of learning when I first learned what it was like to learn. Perhaps you can relate. Maybe you were with a group of other people as a child in a classroom, or with somebody older and more experienced. But in this moment, you learn what it's like to learn. Everything sounds true, and it feels real. So when I think about what we're getting deeper into now, basic instructions and creating that vision of our future, it's like this voice inside. And if you listen, I mean really listen, you can hear this voice right now speaking to you from the very deepest part of who you are. This is your voice of experience and support. I have a voice like that. And you have this voice too. And you'll probably notice when we leave here after this weekend, even in the quiet moments of your private thoughts, you can always hear this voice guiding you, pushing you, moving you closer and closer to that vision you have for your life and career. Now, communication is a very broad term. Communication is a very broad term. What I want to talk about, what I want you to think about is communication at a deeper level. Now, we're learning how to effectively communicate our vision. It's very important if you're ever to achieve that vision of generational wealth. Am I right? Now, there's so much more to communication than you might think. We got to learn to listen, break that old habit of listening, just waiting to answer, like Dan on his talk show. Right? No more of that. Now, you're effectively listening to understand. You're listening, people are listening to you, and you're listening in a way that makes people feel genuinely heard. You got to learn to ask the right questions so that nothing ever gets lost in translation. And learning all the aspects of communication other than just the words. It's about that mind, body, energy connection and how all of that plays into how you create the vision in your mind and how it lands with other people. So this is probably a good place for me to give you guys some more background on me. You know, when I think about how I was able to actually create the vision of my future in real life, it probably all started back when I was about 7 years old, growing up in Pittsburgh. Now, I grew up in a house without a strong father figure. My dad left when I was about 7. So what I did unconsciously was I found my male role models. I collected father figures. You know what I mean? Men that I looked to and who I believed were a good example of what it meant to be successful and a good man. Now, it's easy to see how I can naturally be attracted to men like this. So sports was my saving grace. Because even though things weren't right at home, when I played sports, you know, I just developed a deep love for sports. And I had this deep desire to develop into the very best professional that I could be. So sports is a place where early on as a child I found real self-worth. I just loved being a member of this tribe and being seen as a leader on this team. So sports, I developed that deep love early. So all of a sudden, at about age 7, I had this vision of who I believed I was, the impact I was meant to have, and the legacy I was meant to leave behind. You know, I was not a very highly recruited athlete out of high school. You guys are seeing the after. Coming out of high school, Purdue was the only scholarship I was offered. Not a bad one, Big Ten team. Besides, I got my desired result. I can only play for one team at a time, right? So going back to 1996, when I first got there, Joe Tiller wasn't my coach. The first coach I had, the only coach in America that believed in me, the only coach to give me this life-changing offer to play college football, he left. He resigned. And I freaked out. I mean, I remember saying in my head, like, here we go again. It was like that movie was playing. I could see it with my dad walking out again. So it was very, very difficult emotionally. It was tough. I remember hiding in a bathroom stall in my dorm crying inside for weeks. I mean, I didn't want anyone to know how I was really feeling. I'm supposed to be a leader. So enough of that. At some point, I gotta snap out of it. And I remember thinking, you had a vision, bro. We're here. We're enrolled in this school. We're on this team. The dream's still alive. I knew I needed something, an advantage, something different that would set me aside from my peers and move me back towards that goal faster, sooner rather than later. And so my first thought was, go look in the trash. And then I stepped back. My mind went quiet and I really asked myself, what the hell did you just say? And I realized sometimes things, it's not literally looking in the trash. What I interpreted to mean was, go look for some information everyone forgot about. Something that they don't know that'll give you a leg up. And so I started my search in this used bookstore on campus, not knowing at all what I was going to look for. But as soon as I walked in, it was like it jumped off the shelf at me. I found exactly what I needed right here. The title of the book is The Secret of Creating Your Future by Dr. Tad James. I mean, this felt like fate. it was like it jumped into my hand. I remember grabbing the book and saying, "The secret of creating this is what I've been looking for this whole time." And I sat down on a hardwood floor in this dirty store and just started going deeper into it. So after about 15, 17 minutes, put the book down and realized I had no clue what this guy's talking about. I mean, it was out there. This dude is talking about Hawaii, emotions, energy, mindset. I'm like, clearly this isn't what I'm looking for. This doesn't resonate with me. So I put the book down, started to get up from where I was sitting, and all of a sudden I felt stuck. I looked at the book, and it was like it was glowing. It made me think of like that. Remember Eddie Murphy, The Golden Child? It's like it was one of those moments. And it was glowing at me. It was like the secret of creating your future. I said, I gotta know the secret. I grabbed it, sat back down, and just went deeper and deeper and deeper into it until it made sense. I imagine you guys are probably thinking, this is a cool story, bro. What the hell does this have to do with my company? See, here's the thing. Regardless if you're a 25-year-old wonder kid who's at the beginning of his journey, perhaps you're thrust into a leadership position unexpectedly in like a 100-year-old company, and it's your job to carry on the legacy. Or maybe you're at the end of your journey and you're thinking about the next chapter, retirement, and the legacy you want to leave behind. Regardless of where you're at on your journey, this is where I know that everybody here is a lot like me. Because regardless of where you're at, your age, gender, ethnicity, just like I had back when I was 18, you have a vision that you feel a burning desire to experience in real life. So what I want to illustrate for you guys is the relevancy of effective communication if you want to realize your vision. That's what this is all about. The basic instructions of how to create your future. Now, one thing Dan mentioned, he talked about vision versus the mission. Something he said early on. I know Dan said a lot of things since we got here, so you may have lost this one in translation. But he talked about the mission versus the vision. And a lot of times business leaders, people I've worked with, they mix them up. Because they are definitely connected, but there's a stark difference. Think about the mission first. Now, anytime you have a mission, there's an expiration date. There's a finish line. At some point, you either accomplished the mission or you didn't. And even if you didn't, it's okay because you can start another mission. But when you're thinking about the vision's bigger. It's ongoing. There is no expiration date. It's never done. It's when I accomplish my mission, then what happens? That's the vision. What does that do for my experience? How does my home life feel? How do I feel about me once I accomplish the mission? That's the vision. Is what is the other impact besides that number on the bottom line? It's got to be something bigger. Everybody wants more money, right? It's got to be something bigger. Besides, we just learned from Derek that if you need money, that's not something to stress about. So, I want to get deeper into that. And the effect, and for those that are left-brained and need like me to put it in super NFL language, the cost, the benefits of effective communication are not just in your mind. It's on that bottom line. The cost of ineffective communication, the losses could be astronomical. There was a study that was published in the Harvard Business Journal in 2017 called The Cost of Poor Communication. And what it found is that companies can lose up to $25,000 a year per employee due to the subpar communications of their average employee. Not the guy, not the dummy Napoleon Dynamite dude in your office. You, if you're the average employee, this study's about you. is that people don't know what they don't know about communication. If you have 500 employees and you're a mid-sized company, $13 million a year, you're leaving on the table. It's not a good feeling. So that's what this is really all about. It is consistent with the business aspect. It is consistent with what they're doing. So what you gotta recognize is that it makes sense as a leader to learn more effective communication skills. Because leaders and companies that have built more effective communication skills into the culture of their company lead more productive projects and collaborations that often exceed KPIs and goals. It makes total sense when you think about it. With maximum comprehension and minimal misunderstanding, all of a sudden your team is developing faster and faster what I call the 3 C's. Confidence, competence, and comprehension. I write that down, 3 C's. Competence, competence, and comprehension. So for those of you that have employees, your team being more confident, more competent, better at comprehending. This is something that interests you, am I right? Am I right? Yes, so just like 2 people. Yes, sir. That's cool. I'm here for you. Right. I'm here for you guys. Let's just go deeper into it. So, when you think about these basic instructions, you think about everything we've learned or are learning here through Bellwether, it really all kind of goes together, more than you might realize. So what I'm about to talk about connects directly to the laws that you're learning. And so I want to start by really connecting the dots on how this combination of basic instructions and Bellwether is a lethal combination. Lethal. So I'm going to start talking about the law of the architect and the law of the lock. We'll start with the law of the lock. Now, the law of, well, let's start with the law of the architect, forgive me. The law of the architect essentially teaches us that you only have 3 jobs. If you're the CEO, the president, the founder, you've got 3 jobs, and that's it. Number 1, create a clear vision of the future for the company. You gotta be able to create a vision for the company. That's your job. Where we going, boss? They're asking you, boss, because it's your job. The second is to communicate this vision to everyone else. Nobody's gonna create their vision on their own. You're going to need the cooperation of other people. And the only way, if I'm wrong, I beg somebody to jump out and correct me because I love to learn. But when you think about it, the only way I can take what's in my mind and put it into yours is with communication. Right? So the third, which is what we focused on a lot, is build the value of the asset. Recognize that the monetary value of your product, service, and especially the assets is a direct reflection of your capability of communicating that vision. So this is the one I really want you to focus on. Are you aware of what the words you're using, what you're really communicating? Because most people don't realize, if you go back in time far enough to the Middle Ages, 1600s, back then, words and magic were considered one and the same. Think about it. Abracadabra. Words are magic. That's why we call it spelling. The law of the lock. Now this is about unlocking your full potential. Okay? It's about unlocking your potential as a leader. And some of us have big visions. Big visions. I know mine, I only think big. Big visions. You recognize that the bigger your vision, the stronger your leadership abilities need to be. The more pertinent to your existence that these laws are. The bigger your vision, the more you need to focus on what you're learning here. And so, it's recognizing that learning more effective communication skills is synonymous with increasing your leadership skills. If you're not getting better at communication, you're not getting better. Period. There's no kind of sort of but. No. You either are getting better or you're not. You're either pregnant or you're not. You ask somebody, did you sleep with him? Well, a little. No. No, you either did or you didn't. So that's the question you gotta ask yourself. Am I working on getting better with my communication? Something to think about. So when I was invited to speak here today, it made me think about a client I coached one-on-one back in 2020. Now, most of the one-on-one coaching I do is via Zoom, so I have the ability to coach people regardless of their geographic location. I mean, I was doing that way before COVID anyway. So my client is based in Sydney, Australia. He's the CEO of his company. They have offices in the UK, in Auckland, New Zealand, and San Diego. And he's telling me about how he's having trouble communicating with his direct report. I believe it was a CFO. See, again and again, they would meet face to face. And my client, believing they had a productive and positive time together, after a little while would start to get this uneasy feeling after he spoke to this person specifically. See, and there's been many times when they had these meetings, he thought everything was great and they're on the same page, but then the results turn out to tell a different story. So my client's telling me, God, I hope he gets it. I mean, he gets what I'm saying, right? He can see, I mean, does he see what I see? He understands my vision for the company, right? And so my client, he's telling me, he says, you know, I can never tell with this guy. You know, I never know if my message is landing. He just stares at me, wide-eyed, gazing back at me like. So he asked me, how do I know that he's picking up what I'm putting down, man? How do I know that my message is landing? And if it's not, how do I make myself clear? That's what we're getting into right now, the basic instructions of creating your future. The basic instructions of creating your future. Thinking back to when I first found that Tad James book, you know what he's talking about? He's talking about neurolinguistics, the science of how words affect the mind. I mean, connect the dots. What he's saying is learning better communication is the secret to creating your future. It's a lot simpler than you might think. I guess that's why we call it basic instructions, right? So these are basic instructions. It's pretty simple. Now, we're going to go deeper into each one so that you guys get a clear picture. I'm going to do my best to communicate in a way that is impossible to misunderstand. So, everyone got that? Okay. Start with basic instruction number 1, interpretation. So, basic instruction number 1, interpretation, connects directly to principle of present. And so, principle of present tells us that in the physical universe, there are only 3 awareness positions: past, present, and future. And so to be present, your mind, your body, and your vision have to all be aligned right now, in the moment. That's what being present means, right? So it's really all about making sure that as I'm listening, my mind, my emotions, and that picture of that perfect future are all feeling, as the ancient Hawaiians would say, pono. Everything's got to be good. There can't be any issue at any level. So when I teach neurolinguistics, before I even get into that, how many of you guys have heard the saying, perception is reality? Okay? I think I know what people mean when they say that. That reality is whatever you believe it is, which I agree with. The question I have is, why is perception reality? Well, the way I teach it when teaching neurolinguistics, some of you may have heard this before, is perception is interpretation. Perception is interpretation. This is how basic this is. And again, if I'm wrong, please correct me. It really all comes down to, anyone have like a dictionary app on their phone? Constantly learning new words, right? You can look this up. If I'm wrong, again, feel free to stop the show. But it all comes down to the dictionary definitions of these two words. You may not realize that maybe you don't know that you don't know the actual definition. Perception, the state or process of becoming aware of something through the five senses. I smelled something, I tasted something. So it takes me back to my client in Australia. He was telling me about how he didn't like the look on the CFO's face when he was talking to him. And he had a disrespectful tone. I mean, how can he talk to his boss this way? And he just had this gut feeling that made him wonder if working with this person is even a good idea. I mean, he felt really strongly about keeping him around, because when he hired him, it was because of his track record. And so he really wanted to do everything he could to change, to make this relationship work. But you recognize that that look that he saw, the tone that he heard, in that gut feeling, that's all it is perception. It doesn't mean anything yet. He just saw something, heard something, felt something. Then, the word interpretation, and this is big. The action of explaining that which I perceive. You see where I'm going? The meaning of that which I perceive. This is the operative word.
Yep.
So essentially, what perception is interpretation means, life is whatever story I tell about it. Understand that those five senses is our only connection to the outside world, the world outside of your mind and body. You have no other connection other than those five senses. Whether you're reading a text, if you're in a meeting, if you're on Zoom. You can't make sense of what's going on out there unless you get it through those five senses. And then I have to interpret it and give it meaning. So I never met the CFO. It just made me wonder, was his face really that bad? So he thinks about it. He's telling me the story. He said the CFO's look on his face was one of contempt. You know, the tone was disrespectful. And that feeling made him wonder if, should I even be working with this guy? But that was his story. That was my client's story. Was that really what was happening? I don't know. I wasn't there. I live in Kansas City. So, just recognize that perception is interpretation. Recognize we are all the narrator of our life. We're the ones telling the story. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's nobody inside your mind thinking your thoughts or feeling your emotions but you. Am I right? Right. Anyone who didn't answer, but recognize that I gotta be, if I'm gonna be a leader, increase my leadership skills, I gotta be accountable for my interpretations, the stories I tell myself, because if I'm not, it's gonna be hard to exercise that principle of present. Be very careful. Words are some powerful stuff. Basic instruction number 2, listening. And this one also connects to principle of present. So when you think about listening, most people think about listening to just the words. If you're listening to just the words, and the rest of the words you're listening to are your interpretation, You can miss a lot. You can miss a lot. So, principle of present tells us that to be present, I must be listening intently right here and now. That's what being present means. I got to be listening intently now to get a clear sense or make an accurate interpretation of what's going on. I can miss something. So what we're talking about, you guys don't have to pay attention, you know this stuff. The words I write down is sensory acuity. Sensory acuity. Now, again, the only way we have to make sense of our world is through the five senses. So what we're talking about is, if I'm supposed to do more than listen to the words, what am I looking for? We're talking about listening cues. Listening cues. If you're present, mind quiet, and you're listening, you're going to take in a lot more information than those words. A lot more. And you may want to write this one down too. People can't not communicate. People can't not communicate. They can refrain from speaking. That's easy. But it's impossible to not communicate. So, most people don't know, you know the words are only 7% of the communication? 7. 38% is just the tone in our voice, vocal quality. 55% non-verbal. So if I make the mistake of believing only the words matter, I could be missing 93% of what that CFO was communicating. I'm sure you can relate. So, sensory acuity, I look at it, it's something we all have. It's about developing that skill. This is part of effective communication. I always look at sensory acuity giving me the ability to hear what they aren't saying out loud. To hear what they're not saying out loud. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that where the problem comes in? It's because I can't tell what he's not saying. Basic instructions, if you work on effective communication, will give you the skill to do just that. At a level that maybe because you never worked on it, you can't even imagine right now. It's a big difference maker. So, what we're talking about are listening cues. If 93% of communication is not the words, what am I looking for? What are the listening cues? That's it. Skin color. You ever hear the saying like, man, she was shocked, she turned white as a ghost? Or if somebody has a surprise, a secret, a really good one, and they don't want to give it away and their cheeks turn red. You're not looking for any specific change. It's just that when there's something happening in their mind, there are physiological changes in all of us. Knowing what to look for gives you the ability to hear what they're not saying. So skin color, you're not looking for any specific change, just that something has changed. She turned white as a ghost, she turned red. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Skin tonus. When most people are listening, their face is smooth and symmetrical. It's relaxed. So when you talk about skin tonus, we're looking for any change in that asymmetry. You might compress an eye, bite their lip, pressing in the brow. You're just looking for some sort of change. That tells you that something happened in the mind, in their emotions. Lower lip size. The first thing I think of when I think lower lip size is a kid who's sad. His lower lip is sticking out. You ever notice when people are angry, that lower lip will disappear? So you're not looking for one or the other. You're looking, something has changed. Any fluctuation in the size of that lower lip. Breathing. Would you guys agree that the mind and the body are connected?
Yeah.
Most people don't know how they're connected. It's through the breath. It's through the breath. Anytime there's any activity going on inside, you're looking for a change in the rate of breathing. You ever notice when you get mad, you stop breathing? Or if you're excited and something really good happened, it gets really uneven and really rapid. You're looking for any change in the rate of breathing. All of these things are signs that something's going on inside. Then the eyes are the window to the soul, right? Recognize that science has told us that when people go inside to process, they process in different modalities. Like some people are visual, some people remember what they heard first and foremost, others recall feelings and emotions. And so what science has told us is that when people go inside to access certain information, the eyes will go to certain quadrants of the brain. And you can see it if you're present. It's really easy. So, looking at this slide, this is generally speaking where people's eyes go when they're going to access information. So, there are exceptions, which I'll get into in a moment. But essentially, if you're looking at somebody and their eyes flick to the left before they speak, they're creating something in their mind. They're creating something. If they go to the right, that means they're remembering something. It's easy to tell. The easy way I like to put it in normal functioning language or NFL is left is lying, right is remembering. Now, they're not necessarily lying. That's just to put it in NFL, make it easy to remember which side is which. I mean, they may not be lying, they just may be envisioning something, some call or email, something they got to do here soon in the near future. Now, you know how there's a certain percentage of people that are left-handed. So there's a certain percentage of people that are reverse. The reverse. So if you're present and you're paying attention, eventually you'll pick up on a pattern. And so you'll be able to tell if they are reversed. But it's about the percentage of left-handed people. So again, going back to the principle of presence. So when the eyes go up either side, they're either making something up, a picture visually, or remembering something they saw. If they go towards the ears, they're remembering something they heard. And if they go down and diagonally, they're either feeling something like an emotion, or they're talking to themselves. And so this is what we're talking about. Learning Bellwether, we're talking about generational wealth. So we're talking about playing this game at a different level, right? This is next level. And so it's cool to write it down in your notebook, but you know, a lot of people, especially I do a lot of masterminds and do training on neurolinguistics, and people come for self-help, but then they go home and this, it becomes shelf-help. You gotta ask yourself, is that me? Or did I really come here to step my game up? Something to think about. So, basic instruction number 1, be accountable for your interpretations. Basic instruction number 2, are you listening? And do you even know what that means? Basic instruction number 3, what are your expectations when communicating? What is your expectation for the response or result that you intend to get with your communication? And are you communicating from that place? So, when I think about expectations, the word I want you to write down is presuppositions. Presuppositions. You guys know what a presupposition is? It's an assumption, something you can take for granted. It's literally just another word for assumption. So what are my presuppositions when communicating? So when we talk about presuppositions, I select to look at them as a convenient belief to help me get what I want. It's convenient. It's not really about whether this belief is true or not. That's not what it's about. It's about how does believing certain things help me be more effective in communicating my vision. So we'll go deeper into it. The first presupposition I want you to write down is the meaning of my communication is the response I get. The meaning I conveniently believe the meaning of my communication is the response I get. Now, if my client is looking at a CFO and he interprets the look he's getting as contempt, he hears frustration, he doesn't believe they're in rapport or have harmony, then the meaning of his communication to that CFO is contempt. I don't respect you, and I really don't like you. That's what your words meant. The world is a mirror. You ever walk down the street and smile at somebody, and they smile back? The world is a mirror, and we mirror the seen and the unseen. So that's where this really comes in. And so that leads us into, well, what happens when I'm talking to him? How do I get him to respond the way I want to? Because there is no such thing as failure. There's only feedback or collecting data. I hate that word failure. And I don't use that word hate. I hate that word. I don't use it unless I'm telling people not to use it. On my mother's life, my father's grave, I don't use that word. That word is like, every time I say it, I imagine I'm microdosing cyanide. You're laughing, that's the effect it has on your subconscious mind. Because most people, the picture you get in your mind when you think failure is that big red F on your paper. How did that feel? Boom, that's what that word triggers, that feeling. That's why the way Dan explained it is the way I would explain it. Don't use that word. It's dangerous to you. We'll get deeper into that. So there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. And this really brings me to the law of separation. Now, the law of separation tells us that our first strategy typically is not going to get us, it's not going to create the vision. It's the same in communicating. You can't wait for the how to start working on your vision, just like you can't always wait for the perfect words to communicate it. So you can imagine sometimes there's going to be misunderstandings. There's going to be misunderstandings, and that's okay. Because if I presuppose that there may be a misunderstanding, then I can take that feedback or collect that data to improve my communication. Instead of saying they're the problem, I can get better. That's what that really comes down to. And so it also connects to the principle of perseverance. Now, the definition of perseverance is to strive towards higher goals while learning to deal with failure and setbacks. But remember, there's no such thing as failure. So the law of separation, each attempt that I make to communicate my vision, whether it landed or not, I'm walking away with something valuable. I either got them to adopt my vision, or I got the information I need to get better at communicating it. There's no in between. There is no negative result unless you use that other dirty F word. That's all it is. There's no such thing as failure. It's only feedback. Now, which brings us to basic instruction. The next expectation. These are all the expectations are basic instruction number 3. Resistance to my communication is a sign of lack of rapport. If I'm getting yeah, but rapport has been broken. They're not accepting it. Yeah, but those words literally program the mind to reject whatever came before yeah. It's like a delete button. You're communicating to your subconscious mind, don't learn. We know everything. That's literally what that does. Don't learn. We're right. You don't know what you don't know, like Coach said, right? So I'd be careful resisting communication with your language. Now, what is rapport? Rapport is just, the objective of rapport is to establish trust and harmony in this relationship, in this moment. So if I'm getting pushback, argument, they seem to not be paying attention, I got to reestablish this trust and harmony right now. And clients I work with, I always ask them, like, you're the leader, right? You're the leader of the whole company. You're the one leading this mission and towards this vision, right? So yeah, then you're responsible for the report. You are. If you're out of report, it's because of something I perceived and interpreted. And even if it's not, who cares? I can't control them, but I can control me.
Right.
And so that's what it is you got to be able to establish trust and harmony. And it's not difficult. It's actually very simple. In neurolinguistics, they call it, I'll come back to what they call it. But just think about how 93% of communication is not the words. We're talking about the other 93%. How do I use that to reestablish trust and harmony? In neurolinguistics, it's what's called mirror and matching. So when we talk about mirroring and matching, it's about using that 93% to communicate with it. Now, instead of looking for it, you're using it. I want you to, this is something else I would definitely write down. People like them. People like them. So I'm not talking about having a deep connection or even knowing much about the person you're talking about. It's about establishing similarities without using words. And it's really easy. It's just using the other 93%. So breathing, using your sensory acuity, notice their rate of breathing. Are they breathing deep? Are they not breathing? But if you notice this rate of breathing, match this rate of breathing. Now we're alike. You know? Take a look at their torso. Are they leaning one side? Are they leaning forward? Are they leaning back? Those are things you can mirror and match to reestablish harmony. Didn't have to say a word. Now, look at their posture. Are they upright and tense, or are they sunk down in their chair and relaxed? Pay attention to that. It's going to tell you something about what's going on in the mind. Pay attention, and if you want to reestablish rapport, that's something you can mirror and match. So if they're laid back and relaxed, you can lean back and relax. It's really that simple, and it doesn't take long. If you match their physiology, you'll match their energy. If you match their physiology, it's the mind-body emotional connection. Not only does something in the mind change the physiology, but your physiology changes what's in the mind. It's really that simple. So, basic instruction number 4, flexibility in your communication. Talk about flexibility. With that, it's a neurolinguistic term known as the law of requisite variety. Now, just to not confuse you, this is not a bellwether law. It's not. I mean, it's good if you mix them together like vodka and OJ good. This is another presupposition, but it gets its own. It's basic instruction number 4 now. But this is another presupposition. So, what the law of requisite variety says in neurolinguistics is, he who has the most flexibility in communication and behavior has maximum influence over the entire system in every interaction they're in. The person who has the most flexibility in their communication and thinking has maximum influence over the entire system and in every interaction they have with others. He who is most flexible wins. Think about how handy that could be in the negotiation. That's, Sometimes by developing or following this requisite variety, the law of requisite variety, you can change your thinking like that even in the middle of a conversation to get what you want. To give you an example of the importance of this particular law, the number one example I can think in business is, he ain't gonna remember besides he's on his phone. Yeah, I got you. I know, I'm just,
Yeah.
but I do that all the time when I'm in meetings like this. But the number one example I can see of what happens when you don't apply the law of requisite variety is Encyclopedia Britannica. Or what I tell the kids nowadays, it's the internet in the book. That's what it is. Now, there are transcripts in Encyclopedia Britannica's, there's transcripts of leaders saying things like, we're Encyclopedia Britannica. We are the leader of this industry in terms of information. I'm not getting caught up in this internet thing. It's a fad anyway, right? The internet, it'll be gone here in a couple of years. We're the leaders. If people want information, they'll have to come to us. We don't need to be flexible. We don't need to change. We're the boss. They were not following the law of requisite variety. Because I don't know if you've seen one of these lately. I got a blockbuster to sell you. Very valuable asset. So, really, that brings to mind the law of adaptation. The law of adaptation. So, as I'm attempting to communicate my vision, and I use my sensory acuity to interpret that it's not landing, the more flexibility I have, the quicker I can come up with a better strategy to get it across. How else can I explain this? Pay attention to my body language, my energy right now. What story am I telling myself? Yeah, exactly, you got it. You got it. And so, being able to be flexible and adapt is actually gonna, developing that, you're gonna get the vision to get across faster and faster. The more you do it, the better you get at it. You're gonna get that across faster and faster. So, with that said, think about it from the standpoint of being the head of a company, right? You gotta communicate your vision to everybody underneath you. You see how the light's only up there? You're the only one that can see in your mind. How are we gonna spread this light down to direct reports, to contractors, partners, all the way down to the customer and the community? They all have different needs, different motivations. And that flexibility can make it easier to reach each and every one, to influence them to take the necessary actions to make your vision reality. But if he doesn't get it, it'll be a chink in the armor. Bike chain popped. I was moving along, and all of a sudden, something to think about. So, what happens when I develop these skills? What happens when I become a more effective communicator to match the level of leadership ability that I need to actualize my vision? What if? So it goes back to that night in the bookstore when I was 18, when I found this book, The Secret of Creating Your Future. It's all about neurolinguistics and communication with yourself inside. And learning the importance of language. When I was 18, I came up with a mantra. You know what a mantra is? Like affirmation. And I used to say this to myself all the time in all kinds of situations. So when I was in college, so socially, in class, but especially in football field. I used to say this to myself again and again. The mantra I came up with is, the mind commands, the body obeys. The mind commands, the body obeys. And see, here's my thought process, is I envisioned that if I could control and communicate in my mind effectively, that it would get me my results on the football field. Automatically. If I just give the order, then everything should take care of itself. That was my logic at 18. I think it worked, I don't know. But the mind commands, the body obeys. That's what learning is about, is making it automatic. Again, like Dan mentioned earlier, how many people here drive? Okay. I want your honest answer. You can yell it out, I don't care. When is the last time you had to consciously think about every step it took to operate that machine, that automobile?
15.
Right.
First
Right.
year.
Okay. All right.
Driver's ed.
Now, I want you to go back in your mind to when you first learned to drive. First time you got behind at 15.
Yep.
Go back to that day, that moment, right now in your mind. And think about it. You were probably white-knuckled at
Yep.
10 and 2.
Totally.
Turn the volume down. I need silence so I can concentrate. No, we can't turn on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, which one's the gas, which one's the brake. And if you learn on stick,
Yeah. Stick. Stick.
woo!
Stick. Stall.
Now all of a
Grind.
sudden, you get in the car, getting home, you zone out, right? You don't notice, that there's something on the seat. You don't notice how you feel. You don't even remember the songs you were listening to, but you were singing every lyric. I didn't remember any of the cars that I saw, and all of a sudden, I'm pulling up at home. A lot different than that first time, right? So now, for each and every one of us, when it comes to driving, the mind commands, the body obeys. That's what that means. That's what the unconscious heard. See what I mean? So, going back to the idea of mission versus vision, and really, I want to accentuate the difference between these two. So, you think about mission, there's an end point to this. It's an end point. It comes to a point where you either accomplish the mission or you didn't. And again, it's okay because it's just feedback. When you think of vision, now the vision is so much bigger. Think about it like this. What do people say when they hear the name of your company? What do they say and feel? What does your label, and that label could be your name, what does your name mean when people say it or hear it? That's what the vision is. So look at other examples in business. When you think of Mercedes-Benz, when you think of Mercedes-Benz, you think of luxury automobiles with a high level of professionalism and give off this aura of elegance and luxury, as opposed to BMW. I mean, just think of their tagline, the ultimate driving machine. Very different image. That's what the vision is. It never ends. I mean, I remember watching Coming to America when the King's parents pulled up late in the movie and they all had those Benzes. Back then, that was the car. But if the vision keeps going, that's why that's not the 2023 model. It never ends. I gotta keep up in my game. Automobile, learning's all around you. So that's one. Now, I want to talk about another business example that hits kind of close to home for me, because this is where I live now. Kansas City Chiefs. Now, you realize sports organizations or companies no different than yours. That means they have a mission and a vision. So what's the mission for a sports team? Win. That's it. Win. But just like in every sports season, there's an end date where you either accomplish the mission or you didn't. So, what's their vision? The vision is, what is the vibrational effect in my world when I achieve the mission? What is the change? What is the impact of accomplishing that mission? So when you think about the impact for those people, your company's no different. That's what you're learning here. That's what we're talking about with generational wealth, is that effect. That's the effect we're talking about in your life. It changes it for all of them. Black, white, candy, striped. Doesn't matter. Understand that the secret of your future, of creating your future, is learning to effectively communicate. Now we're talking about dimes and dollars, right? Minus $62 million. I feel like throwing up. And that's based on the subpar skills of your average employee. So imagine if we integrated better communication at every level. Now we're not throwing dollars into the sewer. And so think about it, it's the same concept. The mind commands, the body obeys. So just like it does in your physical body, it trickles down the same way. Now everybody sees what you see. And it's easier to influence them. If they're not getting it, you've got flexibility, so it's easy to influence them to take the necessary actions to make your vision reality. Make sense? Basic instruction. So all of a sudden, that vision, which was just like, God, I wish someday, kind of, sort of, hope, I'm trying. That's my favorite, being sarcastic. But making your vision the reality of your company, your community, and your life. That's what it really comes down to. So, I want to do a quick exercise, very easy to drive this point home. What I want everyone to bring to mind right now is think about whatever your vision is. Whatever that is, just bring it to mind right now. And what I'd like you to do is just write down 5 words of what that success means to you. I don't need an explanation, just 5 words. Everybody, write down 5 words. I'll give you time to do it, and then I'll let you know what we're going to do with that. I work alone. I see a lot of pen play. Anyone who's still going is perfectly fine. Make sure you know what defines your vision. So, who would be willing to share their list of 5 words? Phil.
To document life-changing conversations.
I can dig it. To document life-changing conversations. Did anyone have those exact same 5 words? Anybody? The exact same 5? Okay. Did anyone have 4 of those words? 3? Okay. Who else would be willing to share their 5 words? Jason?
Shit, I made it, Mom.
I like that. I like that. Anyone else have those exact same words? Anyone have 4 of those words? 3? All right. Who had a different set of 5 than the 10 we've already heard? What's your 5 words?
Anything, anywhere, anyone, anytime.
Anything, anywhere, anyone, anytime. That's dope. I like that. Anyone have those exact same 5 words? You see what I mean? 3 people, 15 words. Now just imagine if we did that with everybody in your company. Do they know what the vision means? If they don't know, what am I interpreting and perceiving every day? Am I present? how effectively am I leading? How effectively am I communicating? Things a lot of people don't think about. And so recognize, as you develop yourself as a leader, you're the mind, the body will fall in line. And all of a sudden, everybody's rapidly developing the 3 C's. Confidence, competence, and comprehension. So now your teams are more confident, they're more competent, they're comprehending things easier and faster. Not to mention the productivity goes way up. And the more you develop, the closer that vision gets to being real. I gotta start with me. Otherwise, am I really developing myself into a leader that somebody wants to follow? Something to think about. So, what questions do you have? What did you learn? What do I need to know? Anyone with no questions?
When you come across feedback that probably wasn't the kind of feedback you were looking for from life or people,
Right.
how do you put yourself in a position to be open to it without you particularly, or what strategy you use to sort of shock yourself into being open to it? Because it's going to need to be necessary in order to actually do something about it.
Right. Yeah, this is a great question. Well, the word shock throws me off a little bit, but you're it's landing. So I get what you're saying. It's actually pretty easy. Like, what I practice different energetic healing arts, mental and emotional release, using energy to release past trauma and baggage. It's actually the first step. In a one-on-one coaching session, we got to go through that. I got to get anything from the past that may slow you down now, it's got to go. And so there's a process by which I teach people how to let things go. And it's fast. It's fast and easy to learn. It's very easy to let go of the past. I can hear somebody's mind. You didn't know I can read minds. I hear you saying, yeah, but it is easy to let go of the past. It's kind of like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. When she first landed in Oz and everything's in vivid color, and all these little people, and you know, who the hell is that lady? Why does she look like that? And that attitude and breath. You know, where do these shoes come? I want to go home. I'm stuck. I can't. I'm not good enough. I can't get myself home. She thought it was hard. But it wasn't. Here's the thing. You ever been mad at something, mad about something, held a grudge against someone, like for a long time, maybe a couple years, that you're not mad about anymore? You ever had that? So, how long have you held a grudge? Just guess.
Couple years.
Couple years. When you made the decision to let it go, how long did it take? Seconds. At a training I went to where we learned to do these things, there was a gentleman, some of you guys might have been there. The first thing we do in the training is do emotional release. And the trainer likes to play this game of who's held onto a grudge the longest. And you get some answers, you'd be surprised. 10 years, oh shit. Across you. 15 years, 35 years, oh! And then, I believe it was in 2020, in March. Somebody said 71 years. 71 years. And just to give you context, he was clearly in his 80s, and his dad committed suicide when he was about 5. So you can see how that plays out. I don't have to go into detail about it. But when we went through the release, that connection was gone in 8 minutes. Now, it's not time. Oh, it is time. But I wasn't done answering. Forgive me. Forgive me. Well, can I finish?
Yeah, I was just asking in connection to that question, is it Ho'oponopono that you're using? Is it?
Ho'oponopono
Yeah.
is a technique.
Is
It
that-
is a release technique.
Okay.
It's not the only one. I'm like Batman with it. I got a lot of
Yeah, I'm
techniques. So no, it is. Forgive me for a second. I just want to completely answer this question. That's the thing is, when I get feedback, there's going to be a reaction, an emotion, and that's okay. There's no such thing as good or bad emotions, just positive and negative. So the emotional reaction means that you're alive. I didn't like it. I feel hurt. I feel whatever. That's natural. It's fine. Then forget what they did. Just think about the feeling, and just like you did that grudge you held for years, just make the decision to let it go. The feeling. I'm not necessarily forgiving them just yet. We'll get to that. But I don't like the bad feeling. Get rid of that feeling now before you make your interpretation as to what it means to your life. Does that answer your question? Okay. More questions? Comments? Damn, I'm good. Anybody has any question? Ho'oponopono. That is a technique that is in my tool belt.
It's a really good one.
Oh, it gets much more intense.
What if one does not like their situation?
That's an interpretation.
Right.
So if they don't like it, they don't have to like it,
Right.
but whatever emotions that evokes is how do I deal with what's going on inside me? And so if there's an emotional, if there's an emotion attached to that label of I don't like, the first thing you gotta do is get back to being aligned with Pono so that you can decide, is this a situation that I can change to something that I do like? And now that you're not coming through emotion and you're using logic, you can make an objective decision. Does that make sense? No other questions? God, you make it easy.
What happened with the guy in the CFO?
CFO? Oh, he's, you know, it's funny because when Joshua Lee was talking about all this stuff on LinkedIn, he's huge on LinkedIn. His company, they help your company save money by finding development and tax credits. And he was, you know, in the startup phase. He's a young dude, got offices all over the world. When I worked with him, he was like 28. And now he's become like this thought leader for startup founders and all this stuff. He's communicating a lot better, on and offline. Jason?
You've mastered your mind when you can deal with somebody singing Adele downstairs.
5 more minutes. just want to finish it at this point, because I know I left you hanging. But thinking back to that meeting with Coach after that third loss. So Coach comes in, and he says to everybody, thinking about where you are right now in this season, realize that you don't know what you don't know. And believe it or not, it's what you don't know that you don't know that's running the show right now called your life. And think about this for a moment. Since you don't know what you don't know, how do you know what you believe you do know is right? Don't answer me now, just relax and consider what I'm saying. You don't know what you don't know. And then he continued. The last 3 games have not been fun. Losing consecutive games never feels good. You know? Now, we're in a tough spot, and I hear, you know, if you continue to focus on however that feeling is after the start, whatever you might be feeling, you keep listening to what they're saying on the radio, you know, seeing everything that's on the television and in the papers, you start to believe this story that division, it's lost. We can't do it. I know if we lose one more game, it's over. We're finished. But let me ask you this: what else could that mean? All we gotta do is win the next one. Stay focused and win the next one. Stay focused the next one and the next one. And if we just relax and do that, that vision's as good as ours. Guys, you won 15 straight games last year. We only gotta win 9. Come on, man, you've been here before. Let's just be who we are at the deepest level. And if you guys just follow my lead, follow the basic instructions I'm giving you right now, we're gonna make history. And that's what we did. We were the first 6 seed in NFL history to be crowned Super Bowl champions. We didn't play one playoff game at home. And no team that came in the playoffs last ever won it all. We did. Think about the legends that were in that room. Jerome Bettis, Hines Ward, James Harrison, Troy Polamalu. But here's the thing, the mind commands, the body obeys. Where would we be without this guy? Where would you be? The leader. It's all about the words and how to communicate the vision. It was really no different when we went to the Pro Bowl. Because, this was 97. 97, we were 9-3. We came up. My next year, that 98 season, we won 9 games again. Came up a little bit higher. We beat the number 3 team in the bowl game. My junior year, we still in second place. 3 years in a row, second place. But close, I could smell those roses. And then all of a sudden, my senior year, on November 18th, 2000, which is my 22nd birthday, for the first time since 1967, the Purdue Boilermakers were crowned Big Ten champions. Coach was right. Hold the vision in your mind and watch it come to life. The mind commands, the body obeys. Look at that scene. Just imagine the emotional vibration of this moment. Just think about what that would feel like to reach that level of success in your business. This is what we're talking about. That's the vision. That's the vision. And the thing is, it all comes down to this guy and the difference he made in those that served him in their lives. It's just crazy to think back. Like, I met with this HR director in Indianapolis the other day. And she said, that's weird that you coach this emotional communication stuff. Don't you want to coach what you were passionate about? You never thought about coaching football? Coaching people on how to do what you did? And I said to her, believe it or not, when I think about it now, that's exactly what I'm doing. It's not about football. Football's played by humans. It's a human experience, a rare one, yeah. Not everyone gets to play at that high level. It's rare, but human nonetheless. And it really all comes down to, I think back to how I was so panicked when Coach left and this new guy, I don't know who he is, he didn't want me. That was my story. That was my interpretation. Because he didn't give me a scholarship to Wyoming. How am I going to get him to help me with my vision? And that's where Tad James came in. That book in the bookstore that night. How can I get him to see my value when 115 schools couldn't? And the only person who believed in me left, what am I gonna do? It's just like Coach said. You're gonna know what you don't know. So when you believe you can't or you're not, are you sure? Is that your final answer? It's crazy. Or like Dr. James says, "Ahohe palpo ike kohala." Not all learning comes from your school. And when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at start to change. Success is simple if you know the basic instructions. That's all I got.